And that's the racing mindset, right?
Yeah, it
You know,
is.
you turn up at every circuit, even if your car's a bit of a donkey,
Mm.
you turn up and you know you're going to do your best or better,
Yeah.
regardless.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Helping People Perform podcast. Delighted to be joined today in the studio, the virtual studio, but not far from me over in Woking, an ex-colleague and a great man who I'm looking forward to hearing all of his stories. It's mindset coach Paul Harris from Paul Harris Coaching. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you. You've bigged me up a bit there. I'm quite pleased. I'll take that introduction.
It's all about you, mate. It's all about you. um, I know we've got a bit of a shared history from our
Yeah.
McLaren days, and we'll get to some of that as we go through. But in terms of what got you to where you are today, what's your backstory, and what have you done to get you here?
Um, like all backstories, I think there's a long version and a short version. The short version is I was gifted redundancy in 2019, just before like the whole pandemic thing kicked off.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure what to do with myself, and found that coaching was kind of my thing. So with the gift that I was given, the time and the finances to be able to go and retrain,
Yeah.
and then to have most of 2020 off, while everyone sat around rethinking, it was just perfect for me to be able to get into that. The long story that goes before that, the
Yeah.
reason that I realised coaching was a thing. There was someone who used to work at McLaren who I'd got kind of friendly with, and we sort of exchanged a bit of banter. We had a shared passion in photography. And one day she messaged me and just said that she was in trouble. She was in hospital. A mystery illness had laid her flat. She was in pain literally from the tips of her toes to her eyeballs and didn't
Wow.
know what to do. And her message to me, I can remember it vividly. The message to me was, if I had the energy, I would pull the tubes out and end it now.
Wow.
Which, yeah, your reaction is exactly that. It's kind of like it wakes you up a little
Yeah.
bit. And so, having done a little bit of coaching techniques at McLaren and things like that, and then I just spent the day talking to this lady. And she obviously progressed. She came out of hospital. She went in, rehabilitated and things like that. But then sent me a message a little while later saying, "I don't think you understand that you were the only person I could think of to reach out to,
Mm.
and you genuinely saved my life that day."
Wow.
And so when I showed my wife the message and I said, "Look, this is what I'm thinking of doing," we both looked at each other and said, "You can't not do this," you know.
Mm.
So in a roundabout way, it crept up on me, and then I got the opportunity to capitalize on it.
Yeah. But I know when you were at McLaren, although you did some coaching, that wasn't
Yeah.
your job at McLaren, was it? And so,
No.
what's your background before that?
Oh, right. Well, kind of everywhere and nowhere. I started in the motor racing industry in 1990, with a company who were then called Tag Electronics, that had been set up by McLaren to develop the first fully electronic engine control unit for Formula One. And there were lots of trials and tribulations that went through that. We got fully on our first race car in 93 with gearbox control, and then in 94 with full car control, which was the active suspension car, and the one that Ayrton won famously at Donington with. And so I kind of stayed with that. I then wanted to progress. I wanted to go trackside. I had trouble leaving Tag Electronics to get into McLaren racing. That was blocked, and there were all sorts of politics in the way. So I took a chance, and I just said, "I'm out." And I just left, and went to a team called British American Racing, where I was developing the chassis controls for the Honda cars. Just kind of had the feeling that it wasn't going very far. And then about 10 months into that job, I got a phone call, because at that time there still is a no poach agreement between teams.
Yeah.
So I got a phone call from a colleague who said, "Are you still interested in the trackside role with McLaren?" I was, "Yeah, of course." I was commuting from Woking to Brackley every day, so I was doing a 150-mile round trip every day. And it was costing me more than I was earning, and it was like, really digging deep for this one. It was killing me, to be honest, Paul. And anyway, yeah, so this guy phoned out. He said, "Are you still interested?" "Yeah, I'm still interested." He said, "We'll meet so-and-so in the Maybury Inn on your way home tomorrow night." So literally, I pulled up, went in there. My future boss was in there, and I think we signed a contract, but we did the deal over a pint of beer. That was it. 6 weeks later, I was back at McLaren, traveling trackside with the test team.
Right.
Which was gruesome. We were traveling from November to February, pretty much constant. 18-hour days, very, very cold. Even Barcelona, it snows in Barcelona, and things like that. And it wasn't particularly good fun. And then rearranged at McLaren at the factory, and I ended up being factory based, looking after the electronics on the race cars, like all the race cars.
Yeah.
So I don't know, 250 electronic components per vehicle per weekend, and turning them around for the next week. And then that stopped being fun after about 10 years or so. And McLaren had started a company called McLaren Applied Technologies, who at the time were just doing brilliant fun stuff. We worked with the Olympic bobsleigh team, the skeleton team, wheelchair tennis, sailing, UK rugby, just doing like human performance analysis and instrumenting people's bodies, basically, and taking Formula One technology, sticking it on people, and taking the data and analysing it and seeing how we could perform more. So I did that, and that was like, I can remember saying to the guy who ran the company at the time, "This is truly better than working for a living." Right. And all the way through my career, I've used that line. I don't know how. I've used two lines: "This is better than working for a living," and "I don't know how I'd cope in the real world."
Right.
And thankfully, I've never had to challenge either of those, because I've never found anything better than what I'm currently doing, and I still don't know how I'll cope in the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, because I joined Applied Technologies a few years after it got up and running, and yeah, particularly some of the early stuff. And I know you were highly involved in some of the medical pieces as well.
Yes.
And can you tell us about that? I mean, just as a general case study, because that's a fascinating one in its own right.
Yeah. I the two that spring to mind. One was we developed a system. Actually, we used the system on lots of different scenarios, but we developed a system that could be worn by people who had been diagnosed with motor neurone disease, which was really humbling, because I didn't realize until I got involved in that the life expectancy of someone who's been diagnosed with motor neurone disease is 5 years. Right. And it normally takes at least a year for people to be diagnosed, because they'll rule everything else out first. Yeah. So it was body worn sensors that measured how people's walking, how their gait changed over a year. And we did that along with some speech analysis and things like that. And they wore like simple instrumentation, which was then transmitted to a small hub they had, which then telephoned up to the cloud where we ran all our data analytics from. And I think I went to one of the first trials. I went to the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, which is where we were basing it out of. And I met the clinician there, and I was taking her through the system that we'd designed. And I walked through a waiting room full of people, and she said, "These are all the people on the trial." Wow. Right. And now when I look back, statistically, not one of those people is still alive. And we were running a trial that our part was going to be a year. Then all the analytics had to come off the back of that. And there were these 20 people sitting there who were never going to see the results of the trial they were doing. and you look at it and you think, that there's that saying, isn't there, is it wisdom is an old man who plants a tree that he'll never sit in the shade of,
Yeah.
right? That's exactly what these people were doing. They were giving something serious back, because they wanted to. It was going to do them no good at all. And that was kind of humbling, because you get to that point where you think, I'm just messing about with technology here, right? I've done something that all my life I've worked almost in order to indulge people's passions and entertain people.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's led to this, where I'm actually asking people to really give something back, and I felt that was one of those moments, when you think you're doing something a bit grown up here, kid.
Yeah.
This
line,
is,
doesn't it?
yeah, it does, absolutely. And it's things like that. You think, it's just like, these people are giving so much, And the other time was, I was working on a clinical trial using the same kind of kit for a bunch of people who were obese, and we were running a study. We split these people into 3 groups. There was one group who just went to the gym and followed a gym regime. There was one group who just tried to moderate their eating in their own way. And there was another group who went to the gym and wore one of our, see, I do this because it was worn on the sternum.
Yeah.
Wore one of our body sensors, which monitored their heart rate, their calorific. We then worked out their calorific burn. It monitored how they were moving and how easily they were moving. And these people they were unwilling participants almost. They didn't know what they were signing up for. And they had been, for want of a better way of putting it, they'd probably never achieved or won anything significant in their lives. Okay. And suddenly these people are seeing that they're losing weight faster than other people. They are becoming winners. So it was bigger than we're just creating a healthy life for them and we're re-educating them. And I remember one lady, I think my photograph with her is still in the McLaren brochure somewhere. And as she had type 2 diabetes. And so we were asking, like the heart rate monitors where you got the sticky on patches. We were asking them to wear those. And you had to wear one just down on your bottom of your rib cage and one up, so they were diagonally opposed. And because she had the diabetes, her skin was really, really sensitive. And she was wearing these patches, and they were coming out sores, like proper like bruising and sores and raw patches. And I said to her, for goodness sake, just give yourself a week off. Just stop, And she was like, oh no, I can't do that. I've started this now. I'm going to finish. And she was literally finding new patches of skin to put these things on every week. And she was refusing because she was just so invested in doing something good for herself, And again, looking at that, it's just helping someone to do something, to empower them to do something for themselves, and say, yeah, you can do this. Maybe that's that's brought the coach out in me anyway, I guess. I guess that empathy's already been there, but those 2 things, of all the other things I've done, those are the 2 standout moments, I think.
Oh, wonderful. And that element of, you've taken, as you say, this passion, this hobby sport, which although it's a big business around it, it's generally a big business for hobbyists who just happen to have some decent funding behind them. But there's a lot of big business, but it is ultimately a hobby. And moving that and applying those thoughts and applying those methodologies and the technologies, like you've said, into other applications that really impact people. That's what I loved about the time for Applied as well. It's you're helping people by giving them a new perspective, and that's and that mindset and that Formula One mindset in some ways is something that really helps people. So maybe that brings us nicely on to what you do today then. So tell us a bit more about Paul Harris Coaching. Who do you help and how do you help them?
Well, Paul Harris Coaching is based around the mindset that I built up in the motor racing business. I realized when I started coaching, a lot of coaches will go out there and say, I've got a 12-step program. You're going to pay me this. You're going to do that. And this is what we'll achieve. And straight away, my winning mindset said, well, I don't want a 12-step program. I want 8. Right. I'm not going to, I'm going to fast track you. Right. This is no bullshit. We're going straight into it. Right. So, and the people I speak the language of is people like myself. It is motivating professionals. Right. There's still if you like, a bit of a macho thing about it that, you never explain, never complain, just crack on, superhero culture, right? And I know a lot of people who have broken because of the pressure, especially now the guys are traveling, what is it, 22 races a year, something like that. And the teams are under a budget restriction, so they're only employing one set of people. So these guys are off, and someone said to me, my family gets what's left.
Wow.
Right. And that's not on, is it?
Yeah.
Right. Your family deserves more, or at least equal to what the company's getting.
Yeah. Right? And as you pointed out earlier on, it's not as if they're living a glamorous lifestyle while they're out there. No. There's this perception, isn't there, of the track circuit. It's just, that's not the reality, and it's not what it takes out of the individual either, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've lost count how many circuits I've been to, and all I could tell you really about any one town is the colour of the garage doors. Right. Everything else blurs into sort of like insignificance. Oh yeah, I think there might have been an Irish bar in this one, or there might have been, there's my favourite restaurant in Barcelona or whatever. But you rarely see that. You just know what colour the garage doors are, and it's. I guess with a lot of businesses, they rely on the passion of the employee, okay? Because I firmly believe that money is not a motivator, right? Money is tokens to eat food or buy a nice house or whatever. It's not what drives you. It's a result of what you do. Okay? And motor racing isn't the best paid industry in the world. So these guys are driven on passion, and they're relying on, the teams and everyone rely on that. You've only got to see the way they whip people up at the factory. Certainly, especially this time of year, launch time, when the factory's all decorated in sponsors' colours, and we've been doing this for X amount of years, and this, that, and the other. And the bottom line is, actually, what they mean is we've been screwing the thumb screws down on our employees hard every year for this amount of time. So these guys are working hard, and ladies, but they've got a support network behind them that doesn't necessarily get thanked, doesn't get any kudos. They maybe get a Christmas party once a year if they're lucky, right? Where you get to wear a posh frock or a black tie, and you go out and you pretend for that one evening you're a person of substance, right? But for the other 364 days of the year, it's just a bit crap. Right. If you're stuck at home and you don't understand, and you're phoning up, you're getting phone calls from the circuit, So what I'm helping the people who, on both sides of the coin. Okay, there's the guys who are away, and actually, to be fair, the people who travel don't get that much time to talk, right? And when they do, they're talking to their family, but their family are taking the slack. Yeah, and they're the ones who I get to talk to a fair bit. Just like, and a lot of that is, how do I help so and so do this? So it's like secondhand, if you like. But also, I find more and more these days that I'm speaking to people who, again, like myself, have left an environment they know, a comfortable environment where they can make the excuses for not being particularly happy, because I'm getting paid, because it's local, because this, that, and the other. And they've realised after a little while, as I think as everyone does, that's not enough, and I want something more. So they're the people I'm helping them find that something more. I'm helping them set their businesses up, not in a business coaching way. I could never tell anyone how to run accounts, or where they should market themselves, or this, that, the other. But I can tell them how to think like a winner and behave like a winner, and win before they even achieve too much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take that right mindset in. Yeah. And that's the racing mindset, right?
Yeah.
You turn up at every circuit, even if your car's a bit of a donkey. You turn up and you're going to do your best or better. Yeah. Regardless. So yeah, they're the people.
And how are you finding the experience for yourself?
It's better than working for a living.
And
Yeah,
you
and
can't
yeah,
imagine
I
what
couldn't cope in the real world.
yeah.
Um, yeah, do you know what? It's brilliant. It's brilliant. There's nothing better. You'll know this, I'm sure. There's nothing better than finish a meeting, having seen that light bulb come on in someone's eyes,
Yeah.
right? When you take someone in an hour, you can turn someone around from I don't even know what I want to do to this is what I'm going to do only for the next week,
Yeah.
right? I never look too far forwards because long-term plans change, right? There are certain things that are beyond our control, but next week is firmly within your control. Next month is in your control. And just being able to make people realize that they're not trying to solve the whole problem. They're only looking they're looking at the top third or so of the iceberg,
Yeah.
and all the stuff that's under the waterline is immaterial right now.
Right.
Because as you take more and more of the top, it comes up.
Yeah.
So getting to that point where you just see someone go, "Oh my god, I've got it!" Right? That is like, yeah, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. And what I love about that short-term action approach, it's one that I try to follow with myself and helping others, is it really embeds that I'm doing something, and that positivity that comes through. I might not be achieving that end goal right now, but I'm doing something to move myself towards it. There's nothing more motivating than getting that momentum going, is there? It's yeah.
And it's that first step,
Yeah.
right? It's the first step off the diving board, right? That's the scary one. Once you're falling towards the water, you're on your way. Yeah, there's not like all you can do is change how you enter the water, right? And it's that, and so I speak to people a lot about imposter syndrome,
right?
Which I think is a little bit of an overused term now. It seems to be. It's funny. I was talking to someone about this the other day. Everyone seems to need a label right now, right? And imposter syndrome is a big one. That again, I'm making assumptions, but I'm sure you're not unfamiliar with the feelings.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, I remember the first time I walked into a Formula One garage, and everyone except me seemed to know what they were doing, right? And I was almost like walking around with this big neon sign pointing "New boy, new boy," And actually, I think there's a degree of there's a fear of failure for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Which people are that grows big in people's heads. And that actually motivates you to stop. Okay. But I think what people don't realize as well is they carry a fear of success.
Right.
Okay. Because success means you are someone different. You are suddenly who you said you were going to be. Right now, if you look at we're talking about racing, right? You look at that 11-year-old Lewis Hamilton who went up to Ron Dennis at the Autosport Awards and said, "I'm going to drive for you, and I'm going to be world champion." Right, right. That is a huge belief in his own success.
Yeah.
Right. He knew he had at 11 years old. He knew in 10 years' time who he was going to be. He knew what he was going to look like. He knew, pretty much who he was going to drive for, who was going to pay his bills. And he may not have known how he was going to get there, but he had this belief, he had this understanding. Whereas a lot of people, you'll see, or you used to see, you don't see it so much now. People say, "If I win the lottery, it won't change me." Wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely wrong. Because it will change you. Every experience you have changes you. And so people who say, if you say, let's say when I started out being a coach, I said to people, "I'm going to be a life coach." Right. And I can remember the conversations at McLaren before I left. I'm going to go and do coaching. And in my head, I was thinking, the reason really I'm going to go and do coaching is because I really don't want to sit through another interview. Right? I don't want to interview with another panel. And that was kind of like a big motivation. And people would say to me, "Oh, you'll be brilliant at that. You're good at listening to people. You talk sense." Some people even said I was wise, right? They obviously were drunk. And so I was like, all the time I was basking in that, everyone says I'm going to be good. Everyone says I'm going to be great. But when that stops, when you actually start being who you say you were going to be, all of that encouragement goes away, right? Because now you're no longer saying you're going to be doing something, you're doing it. Yeah. And actually, all those people said, "Oh, I'll come to you for coaching. Oh, yeah, you can help me." They're not there, right? And you're standalone. So you have to know who you're going to be when success comes. And I take people through that routine of I've got one that I use as a marketing thing. If you can indulge me for a minute.
No, always.
Just for a moment, then just imagine, if you can, or no, you are going to imagine, right? You're standing in the doorway of a room, okay? And inside this room, there's a party going on, okay? And as you look in the room, you realize it's a birthday party. And you see the colors, maybe there's balloons and streamers, banners, tablecloths, cakes, whatever in this room. And you see all those brightly colored things that go with parties. And you can hear the conversation, the hubbub, and the people saying, "Oh, well done, congratulations, da da da," and what have you. And then you see whose party it is, and it's an old person sitting with their back to you. And you realize it's an 80th birthday party, right? And so you can see all the people and everything going on. You can see the person whose birthday is. And as you enter the room and you go and sit next to this person, if you look at this person, I want you to realize that that's you, right? That is you on your 80th birthday, okay? And as you look at this person, you look and you see what they're wearing. You look and you see around them who's surrounded by them. What's this person thinking? How healthy are they? What are they wearing? Where are they living? Who are they surrounded by? Okay. And all of that is governed by who you are now. Right. Okay. And what you choose to do when we switch this podcast on affects what that 80-year-old Paul Teasdale is going to look like. Okay. And that's where you then begin to lose the fear of success, because it gives you a goal. Yeah. Right. Now, with a following wind, you'll go on from that 80th birthday for another 15, 20 years, maybe. Right. But everything changes what you do. And this is what people starting up a business, right? We've all seen The Apprentice, we've seen Dragon's Den. People come on with a killing idea, right? And they all believe this is what they're going to do. Yeah. Okay. And then they get slated, they get sacked by Alan. Well, they get sacked by Alan Sugar, and then they sit in the taxi and say, "He's made the biggest mistake of his life. He da da da." Where are all those people now? Right? They didn't believe it. They didn't know who they were going to be. One or two, say, who've been on the Dragon's Den have gone and done it on their own. Right? But unless you have that absolutely clear vision of what you're going to be, and to come right back to your question, this is what I'm helping people see. Sorry, I rambled.
No, mate. It's fascinating. I'd cut you off if too much. I know you too well. No, I mean that's those sort of exercise and the sort of things that it's great insight for people, and hope it's great insight for the audience as well. To think when you do go to a coach, this is some of the stuff that you can go through and some of the ways in which they can help. It's not all exercises and things like that. There's a lot of conversation, bits and pieces, but it's that element of helping people get over the fear of how do I go out and find help. When I hear about mindset coach, why should I engage with that? What am I going to get out of it? And hopefully that's given people some fantastic insights there.
I hope so. Yeah. I hope so. Yeah.
So if we switch it around a little bit, who helps you? How do you help yourself perform?
Several ways. I read a lot. I'm currently reading a book called, actually I've got it here, not far away, a book called The Tools by Phil Stutz. Right. Now, there's a film on Netflix that was filmed by, all his name's there, isn't it? Jonah Hill.
Okay, about the psychiatrist? Is it?
About the psychiatrist, yeah. So this is the book written by his psychiatrist and talking about the tools. And that I would recommend anyone read. Right. Because it just changes your way of thinking. I have my own coach. There's no way I could expect to coach anybody without eating my own dog food. Yep. Right. Yeah, you've got to have a coach. Life's too bloody complicated not to have one. Yeah. Right. And I want to be the best I can be. So I have a coach. Um, Various other things I read. Trying to think, I'm just looking up in the bookcase to see where it is. The book that changed my life was one called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely life changer, and just things like that. And I'll watch Jim Rohn podcasts. I'll watch Brené Brown podcasts. Um, but inspiration comes from everywhere. Right? We're surrounded by wise, clever people, and sometimes they say stuff without even realizing it, and that goes in and it sticks. And it's the same with everybody. You can either listen to what is going on around you and take inspiration from it and turn it around in your own way to suit your narrative, or you can just ignore it completely. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of like, yeah, I suck inspiration from everywhere.
Good stuff. Like a sponge.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. If you stop learning, you stop living, don't you?
Yeah.
What's the point? You know?
So, if you had the opportunity to help any individual, team, or organisation with the skill set that you've got, who would you want that to be?
That's an interesting one. Um, there's obviously a lot of my ex-colleagues that, I'm you, you can almost say, I know you need help, but they don't. They're still just too sucked into their own world. I've started reaching out to a few up and coming drivers now. There was a young lady who just posted on LinkedIn recently saying that she's just finished a season in Formula Women, which is like a talent contest thing. Um, and I just reached out to her and I said, and I think a couple of our colleagues did as well, and said, this is me, this is what I do. Love what you're doing at the moment. I love the way you're speaking. Um, you know, but if I can offer anything, please just get in touch. And that's a lot. It's daft because I have to hold back in me. Deep inside here, there's a compulsive helper.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that one.
Yeah. And that's not healthy.
Yeah.
Right. Because you try and help the unhelpable. And I learned to wind that back a little bit. But I cannot not encourage talent that I see. Right. And if someone like this young lady in the Formula W, her name's Jodie Sloss, go and look her up. She's doing really well. But if someone at 21 years old from a little village in Scotland goes out there and says, "This is me, this is what I'm doing," and I've been told I've got talent, then I'm all over that like a tramp on chips. I just and I'll reach out, and if she says not for me just yet or whatever, that's fine. But I'm here. So who am I looking for? Anyone who knows that they have something and just want to be sure that they're doing the right thing. They want to satisfy their own mind. Team wise, any of the motor racing team, any of them, because again, I want to break through the bravado and the attitude and things like that, and make it real for these guys, and help them perform.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, mate. That's what it's all
about.
Yeah,
the drivers have coaches as well. They have physios, they have coaches, they have nutritionists. You name it, they have it. They've got someone doing their PR for them. They've got someone, brushing their hair, cleaning their teeth, and all that malarkey, ironing their clothes, right? There's blokes in the factory. There's, at McLaren, what are there, 3,000 people at MTC?
Yeah.
Okay, not all of them work directly with the Formula One team, but there's 3,000 people who don't get that level of support. Okay, and if a driver with talent deserves that support, so does everyone else who's supporting them.
Yeah, wonderful, because I think that's a really important part of, yes, it's very visible because of the level of financial implications and initiatives and all the rest of it that goes along with that at the driver level, but everybody needs if they want to be high performance in whatever they do, then having someone who can help them along the way is only going to accelerate that, isn't it? Brilliant. And I'm going to switch the question around a little bit. So, who would you like to sit down with, have a coffee, have a beer, have a meal with, and learn from, so that your performance gets improved?
That's interesting, because I've been very lucky. I've not sat down for coffees and beers, but I've spoken to a lot of influential and well-known people. I used to say that I've met everyone pretty much from Ozzy Osbourne to the Duke of Edinburgh. Right?
Are they not the same person? I always thought.
I think they possibly are. I think
Never
they
saw them in the
possibly
room
are.
together, did you?
No, funny enough, never been seen next to each other. But I think in terms of, there's a couple of people that come to mind, but Ron Dennis for sure. Right. Not the Ron Dennis who ran McLaren. Okay. Not that single-minded Ron Dennis who, I want to talk to him today. Right. Okay. Because I know what he's up to right now. And I spoke to some of the guys who are still quite close to him recently, and I know that he's a whole different person. And I would like to know whether hindsight would change anything, whether he would change what he's done. I'd like to know how he stayed motivated, right? What drove him to what he's got, and actually how he compartmentalizes. When he left, were you at McLaren?
Yep.
Ron left, yeah.
Yep.
So, and then he invited everyone who'd been there to a big do at the Albert Hall. Okay, and I don't know if you went or not, but there were, I don't know, 3,000, 3,500 people there. Yeah. And the Albert Hall's a big place, right? And we all watched Cirque du Soleil, as we regularly did with Ron on his dollar, which was very kind of him. And then at the end of the performance, Ron walked on the stage. Now, Ron's a tall guy. He's, 6'2", 6'3", something like that. And he sat in the middle of this stage, right? And he always said, whenever he had a microphone in his hand, one of his first things he would say, which actually is a brilliant imposter syndrome: I'm not very good at public speaking. I hate doing this. Right? Not the way to get your audience on side. So I'd like to have a chat with him about that. But then he sat there and he held, as he spoke about his time at McLaren, he held like silence in the room. 3,500 people he held in the palm of his hand. And I would just like to know how he can close the door on that chapter, right, and compartmentalize it and put it to one side and move on, single focus, to doing something else now.
Fascinating, man. And I wasn't at that do, unfortunately. I couldn't make that, but I've heard a lot of great stories from that night. And but one of the striking things for me in my early days, and probably the imposter syndrome bit, joining McLaren, being in the McLaren Technology Centre and walking along those sort of skywalks, and I see this guy coming towards me, and he's as you say, he's a lot bigger than I anticipated. He just had an aura about him, and just tremendous focus for all of his foibles and other bits and pieces in terms of how to. But the whole of certainly of McLaren Technology Centre and the McLaren team could not have been achieved without Ron Dennis. It wouldn't. No,
absolutely.
It wouldn't be there, or it certainly wouldn't be anywhere near the same. So, an amazing guy. You said two people came to mind. Who's the second?
The second was a guy who sadly passed away some time ago, which is why I'd like to spend time with him now. He was Bruce McLaren's race engineer. He came over. He came over from the States. He studied at MIT. Came over, and he was working. I don't know who he was working with, but he was at Cooper's in Surbiton when Bruce was like doing stuff in the corner. And his own words, this guy called Tyler Alexander. I don't know if you ever. He's got a room named after him at MTC now, I rightly say. But his words were, I'll send you a link to a video of his actually, but his words were, these guys seem to be onto something, so I think I'll stick around and see what they're doing. Right. And this was 1963, right? And he never went home. And so he hung around. And he was on the race team right up until retirement age, so about 60, and he was the one that everyone went to, right? But he never invited people in. He was sarcastic, irascible, wise, funny, just everything you'd expect from an old, wise American fella, right? And there was one time that, again, this is a moment that sticks, right? There was one time we were testing. I think it was Alex Verts was driving the car. I know we were in Barcelona because the doors were red, um, and and he'd shunted massively. The car had completely annihilated itself. And so obviously you get that 5 or 10 minutes where everything's nice and calm before the car gets back to the garage, right? And I was sitting next to him. It was my car that had shunted. His car was okay, but obviously the circuit's red, so everyone stops. And I'm just scrolling through the data to see where the accident started to happen and what have you, and what had gone wrong. And moreover, was it my fault, or should I have picked something up that was wrong? And the car arrived, covers come off, it's dumped on the garage floor, and suddenly it's like someone kicked a wasp's nest. Right, everyone. And I had a lot of kit on the car, so I went over and I saw the number one mechanic, and I said, right, I need to get this off, this off, this off. Let me know when it's clear that I can get in there. And I went back to what we called the battle stations, and Tyler was stood there. He's got his mouse and he's taken the ball out and he's given it a clean. He's put that back in. He's got his chair upside down. He's tightening the screws up. I said, Tyler, it's bloody chaos around there. And he went, yeah. And I said, doesn't this fire you up? Doesn't this get your adrenaline pumping? Don't you want to know what's going on? And he looked at me. And this is a strange thing, Paul. Everyone's McLaren, for some reason, called me Mr. Harris. I don't know why, right? But everyone did. And Tyler just looked at me straight in the eye. He said, Mr. Harris, he said, we're all only born with so many heartbeats and none of us know how many there are. So it'd be an awful shame to waste any of them. Right? And that's the guy, and if I could go back, and he's told me countless stories of simple things, like when he was sharing a flat with Bruce McLaren, how they like Bruce turned up one day with those rubber showers that you put on the taps, and things like that. And he was saying how they were all like, whoa, and Ty's going, shit, we got them in the wall, and things like that, and just his take on life, a guy who had been there, seen it, done it, and his take on life was still so level and so sensible that he would ask you why you thought the need to do something, and would just stand there and wait for you to come up with an answer, But he would also take no prisoners. Just very quickly, this is one that him and my daughter keep referring to. There was a guy in the garage who had a slight stutter, and when he was under pressure, not more of a stand, he just delayed his words. It wasn't an affliction as such. I'm not saying we bash people like that, of course, but there's something that had gone wrong. I can't remember what it was, and Tyler was talking to this guy, and he could be quite imposing. He was saying, "What happened? Who let this happen?" Da 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 da. And this engineer was going to Tyler. He was trying to say who did something, but he just kept going who like that. And Tyler just stopped me. I'll stop you right there. Who? What are you, a fucking owl? So he would cut you dead like that as well. And I think that's where I get my no bullshit approach to coaching from. Right. Let's cut out the excuses. Let's cut out this, that, and the other. Let's lay it flat and be honest with each other.
Wonderful. Oh, I mean, there's so many stories we could talk for hours, I'm sure. Which maybe brings us nicely to the last bit, which is how do people find out more if they want to hear more of these stories, if they want to get in touch with you and start that coaching conversation and understand their mindset? How do they get in touch with you?
Okay, probably the easiest thing to do is to go through LinkedIn and drop me a line on there. I've got a Paul Harris coaching page and a Paul Harris page.
Right.
I'm contactable through both. The content on both is pretty much the same. Website, paulharriscoaching.com. Social medias are all Paul Harris Coaching. So either drop me an email through the website at paulharriscoaching.com or through LinkedIn is probably best. Social stuff tends to get lost in the noise.
Right. Okay.
So,
So LinkedIn, the best one, and more information on the website. I'll make sure those links are in there for everyone to get in touch.
Appreciate that.
Oh, mate, we could talk for hours, I'm sure, but really appreciate your time today, and thanks so much for being on the show, Paul Harris.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Sorry if I waffled a bit.
No, it's all good value, mate. Love it. Bye now.
Cool. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.